Welcome, everybody. My name is Jody Rao. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Programs Manager with the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness, and we are really excited to have you here for our Food Assistance Programs training today as part of our Public Benefits Are Key. Hopefully you all have been able to attend one of our other trainings in the series. These are always done with our wonderful colleagues over at Solid Ground Benefits Legal Assistance. We've got several of their staff here with us today. So I'm going to introduce them in just a second, but just wanted to make sure you all know a little bit about the coalition. So we are a member-based coalition. We have individuals and organizations that work in homelessness, housing, human services that are a part of this coalition and part of our political power with which to influence effective and good investments and policy around housing and homelessness. We do this largely at the local level, so all the jurisdictions in King County and then King County and a little at the state level as well. So every legislative session, we always are paying attention to public benefits and other bills, good or bad, that are going to make it easier for folks to get into housing, access services, and get the supports that they need to thrive in life. We do a lot of trainings like this. We hold monthly membership meetings. I'm hoping you all are on our email list, and that's how you heard about this training. But if not, I'm going to throw the link to sign up for our emails into the chat here so you can sign up. We record these trainings. My colleague, Tim Marshall, does a fabulous job of summarizing all of these trainings, and then any materials, educational materials or slides are going to be posted. If you registered by the time we sent out a reminder email, we included the slides. So those are going to be available for folks. Usually within a day, we have the recording of this up on our YouTube channel. So if you just need to go back and listen or share it with a colleague that couldn't make it, and then usually within about a week, Tim has that fuller blog up that has a lot of information. If you've been with us in Solid Ground before, we sort of break up the materials so that we've got information questions, and then we should have time at the end to sort of wrap that up. If you are someone that doesn't want to be included in this recording, you simply just stay on mute, throw your questions or comments into the chat. Tim and I will be tracking that, and we'll make sure that it gets into the recording. Just being on camera doesn't include you in the recording. It's only when you come off mute. And so it'll either just have your name if you're off camera, or if you're on camera, it'll show your face as well. I believe someone's already enabled closed captioning, but that's also available down at the bottom. You should have the ability to do that. And please, let Tim or I know if you're struggling with that. You can change your Zoom name if you want to add your pronouns or your organization. Speaking of our monthly memberships, our September general membership meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we've really dedicated most of this time for our members to really learn about the City of Seattle and the King County budget processes that are happening this fall. And we're doing about an hour worth of our training really talking about how to be an effective advocate and how your voice really does matter as a constituent of City of Seattle or King County, your experience as a provider or supporting people. I'm seeing folks that have on this call that I know have done amazing public testimony and written comment, and we're gonna, we've invited some of our member organizations in to share their experience with that. So it's gonna be a really great way for you to take the amazing knowledge and experience that you all have and put it forth to our electeds for good budget investments specifically. And then we're going to take that into the legislative session.
It's a quick correction. Our general membership meeting is next week, next Thursday, the 21st, not tomorrow. I'm ready for it to be tomorrow, though. I'm very excited to talk about budget advocacy. But yes, for those who are not ready for a meeting tomorrow, it's next week, and we'll post that link to register.
Thank you, Tim. Apparently, I'm very excited for it to be tomorrow
Yes.
as well. I am. I think it's going to be really exciting. Thank you, Tim. I super appreciate that correction. Um, the other thing that I wanted to let you all know about is we are having on September 23rd, Saturday, September 23rd, is our annual lawn bowling party and fundraiser. This is just a super fun event. We are looking for about 2 or 3 more folks to volunteer. So if that's something you might want to do, or you have somebody in your life that might want to do that, it's going to be from the volunteer shift would be from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then after your shift, you're welcome to stay. It's being catered. I believe we're having smoked salmon and a bunch of other salads, vegetarian options, gluten-free options. And then if you just want to join, I think it's about a $25 cost for the ticket. But our colleague Rachel is the best person to reach out to if you are interested in volunteering. So I'm having really a lot of trouble with the way I've set this up. Our beautiful colleagues, Brittany and April, did all this prepping and planning. And I was like, oh, I've done 1,000 of these and here I am struggling. So bear with me, folks. I appreciate the grace. I'm going to hand it to my colleague, Tim, to talk a little bit about general election. And then I have one more training that I want to talk to you about before I hand it over to our solid ground folks. So Tim, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Jody. So yeah, as you've heard, we do a lot of advocacy work at local and state levels. We also do some more community kind of centered work in our voter engagement program. Uh, Typically, before every election, including special elections and other times of year, we like to go to service sites where folks experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity may access resources. We really like to pass on information, just letting people know about their rights and their eligibility to vote. Folks are more likely to be able to vote in Washington than in a lot of places due to changes to the law. And it's easier to vote in via the mail than in a lot of places. So we want to set people up to know that they can, make their voice heard in their communities. We are hosting 2 in-person voting rights and registration community trainings, one in Seattle on Saturday, September 30th in the morning, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., I believe, 10:30, I think. I'll post the details in a moment. And then we have a South King County event at the Boulevard Park Library on the evening of Tuesday, October 3rd. These are both spaces to come and to share resources in your communities about voting rights. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell everybody you can about this. This can also be a space where you can become eligible to volunteer for the coalition if you're interested in coming to any service sites with staff or other volunteers. So yeah, please let me know if you have any questions. There are registration links in the chat, and I'm also going to put my email so you can reach out to me about this. And I'm going to pass it back to Jody to talk about one more training.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, we are going to get to this current training, but I wanted to make sure you all were aware that earlier this year, in conjunction with the Northwest Justice Project, we put on a training that was very, very specific and for a very specific group of folks. And those were people that had been admitted to long-term care facilities and then potentially illegally or unethically discharged, and how to get those folks back into care. And from that training, a lot of you were like, this is great, this is wonderful. We actually really need a training on how to get people into long-term care, just period, not back into long-term care, just into long-term care, and what that process is. So we have spent the last several months really working with Seattle's Aging and Disability Program, DSHS, our REACH partners, Northwest Justice Project, and we have that training that we're about to finalize. So that's going to happen on Wednesday, October 11th. It's a slightly longer training because there's a lot to cover. So it's 2:30 to 5. We usually really like to cap it at 2 hours because this is a a long time to be on a Zoom call, but we didn't want to rush it, and we didn't want to miss giving you information that was really helpful. So I've got the registration link in there. And then for any of you that this is your first time really being on a training with us, we always record them, we always post them. You can always access that stuff after the fact, and we encourage people to register for them, even if they know they can't come. You're not going to fill up our Zoom room. We have like 1,000, participant limit. And that way you're going to get the most recent updates of any changes and notifications when that information is available. So, whew, that was a lot to share with you all. Thank you for hanging in with me and me giving you wrong dates. Such a rookie move, and I'm not a rookie, so there you go. I am really excited to invite Brittany Lowe, who's a benefits attorney, and April Mazur, and I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, April, who's a social worker with the benefits legal assistance over at Solid Ground. And we are going to talk all about food assistance. So I'm going to hand it over to you two. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jody. I'm going to share my screen so that we can begin our presentation. April and I are going to be presenting together today. So I'll be running the show, the slideshow, and then we'll both be speaking on different parts. And bonus, when you ask questions, either of us can answer. We also have Will Ross, very knowledgeable senior attorney on our team, who's also available and can help with questions as well. So thanks for coming. Let me get my screen shared. Hey, Jody, does everything look okay?
Looks fantastic.
All right. Hey, so thanks for coming today. Before we get started, we just want to remember and acknowledge that public benefit laws and policies are steeped in systemic racism. I think everyone here today is aware of that. We just want to call it out and bring it to the front. We also want to be aware of the impact of racism and stereotypes today, us as speakers, and then any questions that come through. We want to be aware of the stereotypes and racism when we're talking about recipients of public assistance. And we put a few links here as well if you want to do some further reading and explore that more. We also wanted to talk about the Ask a Lawyer program. So because you're attending this training today, you have access to technical assistance through Solid Ground's Benefits Legal Assistance Program. You can send questions or scenarios to this email address here, benefitslegalhelp@solid-ground.org, and then just put Ask a Lawyer in the subject line. So the types of questions that you can send, we've had a case manager who sent us a question about a client who was receiving some various public benefits and then started selling some art through a local nonprofit and keeping some of the proceeds. And the public benefits attorney was able to speak with the case manager and with this client to kind of talk about that new venture and the proceeds that they were receiving and how it might interfere with or impact the benefits. And it helped the person be in a better position to start this new venture. So that's the kind of thing you can reach out to Benefits Legal Help for. Another situation, we had another case manager contact us. They were working with a client who was struggling to keep a consistent job, but the client had been denied for disability benefits a few times from DSHS. And so in this case, the public benefits attorney was able to speak with the case manager, and this one ended up being a referral. So we were able to take that person on with a client and help them reach their goal of receiving these benefits. So please feel free to reach out. You can come to us with quick questions, full consultations, or potential referrals, anything like that, and we're glad to help. So today, these are the topics that we're going to be going through. So we'll do a basic food overview. We'll talk about food benefits for immigrants, the application process for applying for the food benefits. We're going to talk about able-bodied workers without dependents, also called ABODs. There's some new rules that we'll go through today. We'll go through how to avoid benefit pitfalls, and then the hearing and appeals process. And before we get into all of the details today, we wanted to make sure to highlight a new change to the food program. This is something you guys may have seen or you may have heard. If you called DSHS customer service line, I think they added something like this to their recording recently. So since early last year, there's been a big issue of people having their EBT benefits stolen through card skimming. So this is when the point of sale, like the ATM, has a skimming device and a scammer is able to access or clone the EBT card and the PIN number. Sometimes the scammer's even in a different state and they can do this. And this type of theft means that the client still has their EBT card in their possession, but somebody else is using it. In the past, EBT clients could report this to DSHS, but DSHS didn't have a rule in place to be able to replace these stolen benefits, but now they do. So this just started as of August 23rd, 2023. DSHS can now replace EBT benefits that were stolen by skimming or cloning. And so they kind of set these special time limits here that we put in the slide. If someone had their benefits stolen between October 1st, 2022 and August 22nd, 2023, so for that group of people, they have until October 22nd, 2023 to file a claim to have their benefits replaced. But then for anyone else, anyone who has their benefits stolen after August 22nd, 2023, they'll have 30 days to file this claim. And it's 30 days from when you discover the theft. So for example, if the benefits go on your card on October 1st, but you go to the grocery store on October 5th and notice that the benefits have been stolen, your EBT card was skimmed, you would have 30 days from the 5th, from the day you discovered it, to be able to submit that claim. And then we put a link here to the reimbursement claim form. And right now, this only applies to stolen food benefits, not to cash benefits. And then April is going to talk about the SNAP program.
Yeah, so SNAP, or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, kind of colloquially known as food stamps. In Washington, it'll also be called the Washington Basic Food Assistance. And basically just provides food to low-income families or individuals. You are issued an EBT card to access those benefits. Eligibility is based on your gross monthly income, the family size, and citizenship status. And then some recipients, specifically ABOD recipients, will have some work requirements as well. So Washington also has a state food assistance program known as the Food Assistance Program, or FAP. And these are this is for individuals that don't meet the citizenship requirements for the federal SNAP program, but would otherwise be eligible for food assistance. Immigrants without a legal status, so somebody that is undocumented, are still not eligible for either the federally funded SNAP program or the state food assistance program. The process for applying for FAP is the same as the SNAP eligibility. It's the same application and everything. DSHS will just kind of review for both at the same time, and then make a decision on which program is best applicable to the client that's applying. So the household size and income and everything is still applicable and the same for both programs. It should be noted that public charge does not apply to the does not apply to the food assistance benefits. And we'll get into public charge a little bit later in this presentation. And the income from a person not eligible for SNAP or FAP might still be counted when determining the household income. So if somebody in the household is undocumented and they're in a household of other people that are here with a legal status, that undocumented person, their income can still be kind of counted as part of the assistance unit. So, and this sort of convoluted flow chart is just to kind of give you an idea of how DSHS determines whether or not somebody would be eligible for state food assistance or the FAT program or the SNAP program. I would recommend, if you have a client and you are questioning whether or not they would be eligible, the link will be provided with these slides. Kind of follow the link and the flow chart to kind of get an idea of whether or not your client would be eligible.
And then I was going to talk a little bit more about this public charge idea. This public charge is an immigration law, and so I can only talk today about how it intersects with public benefits, but we really wanted to bring it up because there's often a hesitation to sign up for SNAP or food benefits because of fear of this public charge test. But we wanted to explain that SNAP and food assistance, they're considered nutritional programs. They're not cash or medical. And public charge applies to cash and medical benefits mainly. And so we don't have to worry about the public charge test when someone is receiving SNAP benefits. It's not going to impact their immigration process. So what is public charge? It's a test. It applies to some immigrants when they're applying for a visa, or some who are on a green card or a permanent resident status. And under this test, immigration officials could turn down an immigration application if it appears likely that the applicant will become dependent on certain government benefits. So you can see why sometimes people are concerned that this may apply if they're receiving food benefits, but it does not. You don't need to be worried about public charge affecting food benefits. For public charge, the immigration officials will only consider the applicant's use of cash assistance that's received on an ongoing basis or long-term institutionalization paid for by the government. So the cash assistance programs like TANF, State Family Assistance, SFA, or ABD, Age, Blind, and Disabled Benefits, or SSI, those could impact and be impacted by the public charge test, but not food benefits. The public charge test doesn't apply to all immigrants. Again, it's people applying for certain types of visas, some people who have permanent resident or green card status. So for more detailed questions, you could reach out to Ask a Lawyer. Some of these you may need to reach out to an immigration attorney, but we just wanted to bring this up so that everyone was aware. People should not feel discouraged from applying for food benefits due to the public charge test. And then April is going to talk about the next slide.
Yeah, so I just want to cover food assistance for homeless youth. So if a youth is living in the care of an adult that is not their parent, so maybe they're couch surfing and staying with a friend's family or something, but that parent and their parent is not providing for them financially, they can be considered their own assistance unit, so they can apply for benefits and receive them as an individual instead of being included in their parents' assistance unit, or even potentially the assistance unit of the family that they are staying with. A minor is not required to have a residence or income to be eligible for basic food, and should not be considered financially dependent unless the child receives significant or sustained financial or other in-kind support from a non-parental adult. If the minor regularly buys and prepares food with others, everyone that is kind of included in that others category would need to apply and be considered as in the same assistance unit for basic food. So it kind of depends on what the youth's circumstances are and kind of what the living situation is. Specific questions to ask are kind of who is preparing food and responsible for buying food for the youth. If it is on them to be doing that, then I would recommend them applying for food assistance.
And we also wanted to talk about transitional food assistance. This is another program that you may see, and it's connected with food assistance. This is kind of a specific program. It's for families who had TANF and who had basic food. So they were receiving both of those benefits. And then they're going to be leaving TANF. And this is because their income has increased. So they make a little bit too much to receive TANF. Their TANF program is going to be ending, and they're already receiving basic food. The Transitional Food Assistance Program allows the family to receive 5 additional months of basic food. And they just receive, the amount that they receive is the same as the last benefit that they received before their TANF ended. It's another helpful program that you may come across.
And then we're just briefly going to touch on the WIC program, which is for pregnant and postpartum individuals and children up to 5 years old. The income requirement is a little bit different than the state food assistance and the SNAP program, where that would be 200% of the federal poverty line, where WIC is actually only sits at about 185% of the federal poverty line. So it's a little bit lower. The income threshold is a little bit lower. And it, similar to the, EBT program, they would be issued a Washington WIC card. And it just provides additional benefits to purchase things like baby food, formula, fruits and vegetables, milk, and kind of staple type foods.
All right, so we're ready for a question section. And Jody, hopefully you or Tim can help us with that. I can't see the chat right now.
Yeah, I have not seen a question come in through the chat, although I'm going to invite anybody that's, typing, don't rush. We've got time. You are also welcome to just, raise your hand and come off mute. While you all are thinking, and thank you, Crystal, I just want to mention the one thing I did not say at the beginning was we have a post-training survey that we would love for you all to take, because it really does help us understand what we're getting right and where we need to improve in terms of these trainings that we're doing. So I'm going to throw that link into the chat right now so you have it. It's not super long, and it really, we really do look at this to help pick new topics. And then if there's anything that in terms of the format or the content, we debrief and try to make those changes. So threw that into the chat for you. And then Crystal, please take the floor.
I have a question. So if somebody, like you guys mentioned that if they were receiving benefits, and there's that transitional period, if they weren't aware of that and it's still within the 5 months, would they be able to do their recertification and get that?
Yeah, if we had a client that was still within that 5 months and for some reason they hadn't received it, we would definitely help them bring that to DSHS's attention to help them be eligible.
Okay.
And then we've got a couple questions coming through the chat. Is there a way to help people on EBT to be aware of skimmers, and can skimmers be seen on the machines before they use their cards?
So the skimming is, what I would recommend doing is, yeah, I would say check the point of sale when they're swiping the card. If the point of sale machine looks like it's been tampered with in any way, then I would maybe, have them transition your food purchases to a different terminal to check out. They are kind of hard to see, but so yes and no, I guess, on that question. It's a little bit complicated because they are hard to see, but you know, if the client has any questions, then they can ask the store to transition to a different terminal or something like that before they run their card. Would be my suggestion, I think, with that.
I wonder if anyone else here today has suggestions regarding that, or if they've encountered something like that they can share with the rest of the group.
I love that, posing it out to the crew here. We our shop talks are a forum where we invite all of you folks that are doing this kind of work, assisting folks access public benefits, to share exactly that kind of stuff. So Crystal, I'm assuming you still have your hand raised from before, but if not, please let me know. And if you have another question, and maybe while folks are thinking or typing, maybe if they have thoughts around this question about skimmers and awareness around skimmers, I'm going to read another question. Would someone who has DACA status be able to apply for Food Assistance Program, FAP?
Yes, someone on DACA would be able to apply. Yeah, and if they did have you know, luck where they did have a path later on toward another visa or permanent resident status, the public charge would not block them.
And then general question. Yes, this training is being recorded and we will have it posted on our YouTube.
Somebody messed the wall up.
Oh. And it will be posted on our YouTube channel probably by tomorrow. And then Tim writes up a great blog, so that'll be posted with materials and everything. We got a response in the chat saying, I took a class on skimming and was told it's usually a device that goes on top of the original. They recommend giving scanners a jiggle before inserting your debit credit card. And it's also something that we might, and I'm gonna maybe pose this to Brittany, Will, or April, like, is this something that maybe DSHS or our federal partners might have another answer to, or thoughts that we might be able to follow up with them?
I mean, the recommendation to kind of check out the point of sale machine or the where you're swiping your card at is really the best way to try to avoid having your information skimmed, whether, you know, and that's, you know, kind of a general recommendation for anyone that is using these machines. You know, they can be attached to ATM machines and stuff like that too.
Wait, why is it PS3
it's mentioned in the chat that
April, I'm going to interrupt you. Odessa, you are, looks like you're accidentally coming off mute, and we can hear a lot of background noise.
Sorry, we're taking the TV down. I apologize.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Okay, go for it, April.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I would say just checking out the card skimmer, because, you know, they can be attached to a number of different places, point of sale, gas pumps, ATMs. So if for any of us, if the kind of place that you would be swiping or inserting your card looks a little bit off to you or something, then I would recommend not using that device. Just to avoid the potential of having your information kind of scanned and skimmed from you.
Thanks for that. And there's a couple other things coming through the chat, but I'm going to jump ahead just because this is, we're still talking about skimming. So we had someone put in the chat, this is an example of gas pump skimmers from FTC. Not sure if it looks similar at the grocery, but maybe, and there's a link there for folks to check out. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Somebody's asking the question of, I have a complicated question on behalf of a program participant regarding food benefits. Is there someone who I might connect with directly, privately to ask advice? Yes, ask a lawyer. We will throw that information in. You know, if there's something a little bit quick, you potentially could private message Brittany or April or Will right now in the chat. But that's exactly what the Ask a Lawyer is for, something that we don't want to share publicly, or it's a little bit more complicated and is going to require a little bit more of a conversation. So thank you, Jill, for asking that question. I might ask one of my Solid Ground colleagues to throw that information into the chat just so folks have it. And then would someone who is 18 years old and living at university campus be able to apply for food benefits?
I mean, short answer, yes. There's going to be some kind of stipulations behind that, though, in terms of, you know, income requirements. They will likely be subjected to ABOD rules and stuff like that. So I always kind of recommend that everybody apply if they are in need of the benefits, and to see if they would be eligible for them. So.
Great. And then we've got a final question that I'm seeing coming into the chat. Can you talk more about the best steps to take in applying for food benefits, like tips, timeframes, et cetera? And I think this is where we're going, but I'll turf it to you, and it might just be a really perfect segue.
It is. That is the next slide. That's where we're going. Should we keep going, Jody, or are there some more questions?
I think this is good. Keep
Okay.
going, and if folks are, you know, sitting on something, throw it into the chat. I think we'll have time to get to it. So.
Yeah. So this slide is just to kind of give you an idea of what your clients and their households might be eligible for in terms of benefits. So, you know, you can see a family size of 1. That means the maximum benefit amount that they would receive is $281. It is kind of a sliding scale. So the closer that they get to the income limit, which is on the next slide, we'll cover that. The closer you get to that income limit, you know, the less you would receive in the food stamp benefits. So not everyone is not, you know, every individual isn't going to receive $281 a month. That's just kind of where the maximum amount that the person would be able to receive. And it's all, you know, the way that it's calculated is based on, you know, how the number of people in the household, you know, how much is the household making, living expenses. So, you know, if you're paying rent or a mortgage, your property taxes, utility, childcare, and child support are all taken into account when determining your benefit amount. So it's really good when you're filling out the application with people to be very clear on how much money and what expenses are being the household is responsible for, so that DSHS can take all of that into consideration when going through their application. So, and then this again, you know, is your income limits. So again, like the income limits, these are the same income limits for both the federal SNAP program and the state food assistance program. So your income needs to be at or below 200% of the federal poverty line. An exception to that is going to be families exiting TANF, as previously mentioned. And then you're going to have that transitional food assistance for up to 5 months. one of the things that we recommend is if you're not sure if a client is going to be eligible, there is a benefits calculator online that can be used where you can kind of plug and play some of this information. So you can put in, what the household income is, what they're paying in, housing costs and stuff like that, and then get an idea of what that person would be eligible for, or what that family would be eligible for, before you go through the whole process of filling out and submitting the application to DSHS.
Okay, next we're going to talk a little bit about resources. So technically, under the federal SNAP program, there are resource limits. But in Washington state, most families do not have a resource limit. There's only some really specific situations where a family might have a resource limit. Something like if a family member has an intentional program violation, or someone was found ineligible in the past for food benefits because they had improperly transferred resources. So just some really specific cases where resources would be considered, but usually not. But if you do come across a client who was denied and the reason was due to resources being too high, that would be a good thing you could send to Ask a Lawyer or send to a referral with us at BLA. And so April went through the income limits, and we just talked generally now about the resource limits, that generally there won't be any resource limits. But there are some times where with the income limits that April talked about, and she kind of mentioned this too, the countable income could that's what's considered with the income requirement. So sometimes someone might make a little bit over what April had on that last slide, but their countable income is what matters. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more in detail. There's income deductions allowed for things like child support, housing costs, like April mentioned, childcare expenses, and then there's even some medical expenses that can be deducted if a family member is disabled or they're over age 65. There's also a 20% earned income deduction. So if somebody makes earned income, which is things like money received from working, wages, or tips, commissions, some earned income that they've earned through their job, they get to take a 20% deduction when considering their income. And also there's a 50% self-employment deduction. So for self-employment, you just combine together the gross self-employment income and any profit, and then you can divide that in half and consider that your countable income. So those are ways that the income people could make maybe a little bit more than what you saw on that previous slide, but their countable income is what matters. So that can be helpful. And clients often ask, if there's any way to increase their monthly benefit. And this kind of goes along with the last slide as well. So April showed that there was a maximum amount for each size of household. But if someone's not receiving that max amount that was a couple slides back, there's some situations where they could maybe increase their benefits. So again, benefit amounts are calculated based on a household's income. But there's some types of income that are not counted. And so households will have less countable income and they can get a higher benefit sometimes. Federal tax returns, that's not considered countable income. So we don't have to count that when we look at how much someone is making each month. Same with the earned income tax credit. And Washington has a new working families tax credit. That's not counted either. We said this before, child support is also an income deduction. There's a really helpful income deduction that we look for in all of our cases too, where if someone is elderly or disabled in the household and they spend more than $35 toward medical expenses, they can provide proof of those expenses to DSHS. And then DSHS will consider their income to be lower. And that means that the benefit that they receive can be higher. But they have to spend at least $35. So say an elderly member pays $60 a month for prescriptions, they would show proof of that to DSHS, and then they would have an income deduction $60 per month. So that might help them receive a little bit higher amount of food benefits. Even things like supplements and vitamins can count as long as they're prescribed by a doctor. And so just help them provide evidence of that to DSHS. And April will go through how to apply.
Yeah, so applying for food stamp benefits, you can always apply online through the WashingtonConnections.org webpage. The client will need to create an account with a username and password, and then you'll need to have an email address to be able to verify the account. You can also apply in person at any of the local community service offices, or you can call into DSHS and apply over the phone. Generally, when I'm working with people, I will help them fill out a paper application and then fax it into DSHS, which is also an option. And then you are able to kind of follow up and help the client kind of go through the interview process. Because the way that the food benefits work is you would submit the paper application or complete the application, and then you have what is considered what they call a financial interview. And the financial interview is really just verifying the information that you or the client is putting onto the application for them. If you apply in person or over the phone, a lot of times that the application and the interview are going to happen at the same time. It is just if you're applying online or submitting that paper application, the client is going to either need to go into a community service office or call into DSHS so that they can complete that financial interview. If you do not complete that financial interview, your benefits can be denied. So it's just kind of a little bit of a component piece to that. And then what you'll need to apply is the income information for the last 30 days, names, ages, and kind of demographic information for everybody that's in the household. And then the household's expenses, as we've mentioned, heating and cooling costs, child support, rent, and mortgage are all considered when kind of establishing whether or not somebody is eligible and then how much they would be eligible for. And then this is just kind of an idea of what the application looks like. The first page of the application, there's some kind of additional information to this. It is DSHS form 14-001. If you are working with a client that is maybe speaks another language, such as Spanish or Punjabi or something, you can go online to DSHS's form bank and search the form number, and it'll pull up a list of different languages. So you can actually provide the application to clients in their native language, so that to kind of help, provide some clarity to them as to what, questions are being asked and stuff like that. So just a piece to kind of keep in mind if you're working with clients that where a language barrier may be something that they're working on or working against. And then tips for the application process. When working with clients, it's best to try to provide as much information to DSHS up front as possible. So if, providing them with proof of income with the application or shortly after they apply, instead of waiting for DSHS to request that information. A lot of times with this, if you're working with a client that has recently lost their job within maybe a couple of weeks or something, there's also DSHS will more than likely ask for what they call a stop work form, which is DSHS form 14438, which can also be found through their form bank in a couple of different languages. So if we're working with somebody that is a language barrier may apply, trying to provide that information to them in their native language is always advised. And then the stop work form is really just is a form that you would have the employer fill out, just stating, you know, things like when their job was terminated or ended with the employer, and when they would expect to receive their last pay. And that's just so that DSHS can properly calculate the income for the month in which they are applying for benefits. And then DSHS, if you're an advocate and you're helping somebody apply, advocates are always welcome in DSHS meetings. So if you have a client that has some, you know, exceptional barriers that they may be struggling with, such as, you know, complex mental health issues, or something like that, you can always sit in those meetings with those clients, help those clients call into DSHS and those type of things. Another thing that you can do is fill out DSHS consent forms and authorizations, just to provide a signed copy to the department stating that you are the client is okay with the DSHS sharing information with you, is another way that you can do that. And I can't remember the form number for the authorization. I think it's like 16-763, but don't quote me on that.
Thank you for that. And I did throw what I believe is the correct link for that DSHS form bank. And the slides have those two, the application form number and the stop work form. So in there, so you don't have to like lodge that into your brain or your memory. So we do have a couple questions, and two I think are similar. So I'm going to read them together, and if either you as the experts are like, I think those are different questions, or if you as the asker of the question are like, that's not what I was getting at, clarify for us. But so the first question was, how is a household defined if there are multiple adults living in the same place? And the second, I believe, related question is, what if you are living with roommates and no one is related biologically? Do you need to include everyone living in the house if you do not share food or income?
There is a question on the application that asks if you are preparing food for yourself or others, or like how many people you're preparing food for. And I always, when I'm helping people in that situation, I always just include the individual and not, so like if I'm helping somebody that's living with roommates apply, and they are just preparing food for themselves, then I would just include that individual and not the roommates. If there's any sort of communal understanding on how food is prepared, then you would need to include everyone.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple more questions, but if that did not answer either of the questions that those folks were asking, please either raise your hand or throw something into the chat, and we'll see if we can't actually get to what you were going for. Can DSHS verify Social Security income without documentation being included with the application?
I just had a case where they did, but I think it must be rare. So we always recommend, if you can, the more information that you can provide to DSHS when someone's applying, the better.
Yeah, DSHS does have a couple of tools at the ready, I guess, for lack of a better way of phrasing that, to check on things like immigration status and Social Security. But I don't necessarily trust DSHS to have the most up-to-date information or to be verifying those things correctly. So if you have things like an award letter, or, you know, like bank statements even, that you can provide to DSHS, I would almost trust those more than DSHS's system, just to make sure that you're providing the department with the most accurate information.
And then we have one more, I'm going to do a question in the chat, then I'm going to go to the hand, and then I see another message popping up. So I have a question on the requirement to work in connection to being able to have the food benefit. Is it required for a client to work in order to get the food benefit?
That's going to be the next section that we'll talk through in detail. So we'll go through that next, and then if they still have questions, then they ask away.
Okay, thank you. And then I apologize, I am not going to be able to pronounce the name on your Zoom window, but I see your hand. Please take the floor.
No problem. That's my that's just how my computer ends up putting my name there. The Medicare deductible for Part B be considered a medical expense in terms of calculating the SNAP benefit. Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that question. So that's something I'd have to look into, unless somebody else knows that specifically.
Oh,
yeah. Can that question be repeated for me, please?
Can the Part B deductible that comes out of someone's Social Security, sometimes it's $170+ a month, can that be counted as a medical expense that can be reported on the SNAP application or the update in order to be considered for more SNAP benefits?
I'll have to look into that. Maybe I have the answer by the time we finish.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Will. And if you don't, Tim and I will connect with you, and maybe we can throw that into the blog so we can get that answer to folks. So thank you for that question. Appreciate it. I am not seeing any other hands, and I'm not seeing anything else in the chat, but Jeremy will make sure we circle back and make sure that you're getting your question answered as we move on to the next section.
Yeah, perfect. I don't know why I'm silhouetted. I think the sun is just shining into my window right now. So hopefully everyone can, I guess hearing is the most important. Well, we're going to move on to ABODs, able-bodied adults without dependents. And this is where we're going to get into the work requirements that a couple of you are asking about. So able-bodied adults without dependents, or ABODs, that's a special group of people who receive food benefits. And so we're going to talk about that group specifically because they're the ones that are subject to the work requirements. And so this group, this ABOD group, they are aged 18 to 49. And we put an asterisk by 49 because that's going to be changing. The recent debt ceiling bill increased that age, and it's going to go all the way up to age 54. It's going to increase a little bit at a time. And so next month in October, it's supposed to increase to 52 and then eventually to 54. So that's the age range of the group. And an ABOD is someone who is not receiving food benefits for any children under age 18. An ABOD is someone who is able to work and they have no physical or mental disabilities, injuries, health issues preventing them from working. And ABODs, they can receive food assistance for 3 months, and then they must meet work requirements to continue receiving the food benefits. And because the work requirements were suspended during COVID, and then they started again July 1st, 2023, that's why this is kind of a big issue right now. So this requirement went back into place July 1st, 2023. So that means October is going to be 3 months after it went back into place. So you can imagine there's probably people who weren't aware of this requirement, haven't been working. They're going to be using up those 3 allotted months by the time we get to October. So this may be something that you're going to see. I think DSHS did try to make an effort to reach out to people. I saw a few postcards, and I think they did some calls. So you may have heard of things like that as well going on. But again, that 3 months, it can be a little confusing because there's 3 months where they're not allowed to work within a 36-month period. And And so the 36-month period started on January 1st, 2021. And the people will have 3 full months of food stamps as of that date, even if they're not meeting the work requirements, or if they're not excused or exempt from meeting the requirements. And so if you're working with anybody who lost food stamps before January 1st, 2021, and they haven't reapplied, they should reapply as soon as they can, because they may now be eligible, or at least they'll have the 3 months where they're eligible until they and then meet that work requirement. And of course, people who are exempt from meeting the work requirements, they'll continue to receive food benefits just as they have been. And then what are the ABOD work requirements? So ABODs must do one of these things on this list here. They must work at least 20 hours per week, and that's averaged monthly, so 80 hours a month. Or they can volunteer in the community through workfare. And clients can get a list of workfare organizations or learn how to sign up from DSHS. The number of volunteer hours through workfare, that's determined based on the benefit amount divided by the state or local city minimum wage. Or another thing they can do, instead of working 20 hours, volunteering through workfare, they can participate in state-approved employment or training programs. These are programs like LEP Pathways, programs included in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, AmeriCorps or VISTA. And then if they miss work or volunteer hours, they should contact DSHS immediately and let DSHS know the reason, because there is a good cause exemption available for things like missing work due to transportation issues or things like that that might come up. There's also a lot of exemptions to work requirements, and so we'll go through those as well. And right now, these rules are only being implemented in King County and Snohomish County. So if you're working with people outside of these 2 counties, they are not subject to these ABOD work requirements right now. Also, those living on the Muckleshoot or the Tulalip reservations, they're also exempt or not subject to these right now. And so here's some information. What if someone is an ABOD, so they they do fall into the category of being an ABOD, but they're not able to meet the work requirements. So again, there's good cause if they don't meet the work requirements for that day because they had an injury, they had a transportation issue, a childcare issue, something like that, an illness. They should notify DSHS right away, and there's as long as they have a good reason or good cause, that can be okay. And then there's also multiple exemptions to the work requirements, and we have those listed on the next slide. So we just list all these out here. People are not required to meet these work requirements, even if they're ABODs. If they're not physically or mentally able to work, they care for someone with a disability or an incapacitated adult, if they're taking part in a drug or an alcohol rehab program, if they receive a disability-based benefit like SSI, SSDI, ABD, that makes sense because they've already shown that they have a disability and then they're receiving that benefit. If the person's pregnant, they have unemployment benefits, they've applied for unemployment benefits. If they're a student enrolled at least half-time in a recognized school, someone I think earlier asked about students, so that would apply. If they cannot work or find work because they're homeless, or if they already meet the work requirements of an employment or training program through TANF. A lot of people that receive food benefits, they may also be receiving TANF benefits and completing work that way as well. Next, we have some tips for ABODs. So if a person thinks that they should be exempt because they're unable to work, of course, they need to provide evidence to DSHS. So remind them to talk to their doctor, get a written statement that indicates that, or some health records to show that they're unable to work. If the person is homeless, they should call DSHS or have someone else call right away to let the department know that they're homeless and unable to work. And there's a new program starting that started earlier this month. So those who are homeless or veterans or those aging out of the foster care system, they can also apply for an exemption. And again, I know we keep saying this, don't wait for DSHS to find out this information. It's best to upfront provide this document and details to the department. So if possible, right when the person's applying, have them provide evidence if they meet any of these exceptions from the work requirement. So if they fall into the ABOD category, that age range that we looked at earlier, and they're not able to work because they meet an exemption, provide the evidence if they can when they apply. But the benefits will end if the person after 3 months hasn't met the work requirements. But then if they do become exempt from the work requirements and they show evidence of that, or if they move out of King County or Snohomish County, then they'd be able to get the benefits back. Okay, and some questions related to ABODs or anything else from today?
I'm just gonna check back, and Jeremy, if that answered your question, I will accept silence or like thumbs up in the chat, and if not, let us know and we can try to circle back. And then it says, what if an ABOD works less than 20 hours a week, but also attends school for less than half time?
Let me look back and see here. So you have to be enrolled as a student at least half of the time in a recognized school to qualify for that student exemption. So if you weren't enrolled at least half time, then you would need to meet those work requirements.
So but can you be a full-time student?
Yeah. So if you're full-time, then you're enrolled more than half-time. So then you would be exempt. You would just show evidence that you are enrolled in a recognized institution full-time, and DSHS should provide that exemption from work. Yep.
And I'm gonna follow back up on Felix's question about working less than 20 hours a week, but also attending school for less than half time. Is that potentially an example where, you might try to do a good cause exemption, or, because it's kind of like not quite one requirement and not quite the other, but parts of requirements?
Yeah, perhaps that's a pretty specific question. So I'd probably have to do some more research on something like that. But if that's a situation that you're dealing with and you want to send it to Ask a Lawyer, that's something we could look into and help with.
Thank you. I always love the moments to plug the Ask a Lawyer, right? Because the reality is you all are working with folks that have a lot of complicated situations and are navigating a very, one could argue, purposefully complex system, and you are doing amazing and great work. So we have folks that can help lighten that load for you and walk that path with you as you walk it with the folks you're working with. So thank you for that. And I see Will found an answer to our previous question. Medical deductions for SNAP include health insurance cost, both premiums and deductibles. So Will, I invite you if you want to share a little more.
Yeah, well, I just want to also clarify that is and there are special rules for people who are over the age of 60 or older or disabled. So, but since the person is talking about the Medicare deductible, which has been taken out of their Social Security, obviously they're going to be disabled. They're going to be over the age of 60. So that's the rule that would apply. And I hope that does answer the question that the person had.
Thank you, Will, for taking.
And that's what I thought. That's what I thought it was. I just had to double check, because I don't like giving the wrong answer when I can spend 10 minutes to verify the correct one. So
fair enough. I appreciate you taking the time, Will. And yeah, God forbid you you on a recorded, 100-person training tell people the wrong date for your own general membership meeting. Yeah. Whew. Would never want that to happen to me. Thank you, Will. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the answer. That was great. That's awesome news. Thank you.
Wonderful. That was my next comment. I wanted to make sure that answered the question for you. All right. I am not seeing any other hands. I'm not seeing any other questions coming up.
We have one other question that I think was sent by a direct message accidentally.
Thank you, Tim.
Going back to students and being exempt from work requirement. What if a person receives work study? Would that exclude a person from those work requirements?
That's pretty specific question. I don't know for sure. I'll have to kind of research that. But I would think that you would try to ask for the transcripts, and if it showed student status and there was a transcript, it seems likely that that would be something that would count as an exemption.
I wonder, and I'm just kind of spitballing off of that question. I wonder if the work study would be considered earned income too, because the student would be receiving a paycheck. So, I mean, send a direct, if you have a student that you're working with, you can send the direct question to ask a lawyer, and we can look a little bit deeper into this. But it may be that the work study program would count towards that working requirement. But I don't know for sure.
Hi, can I cut in real quick? I don't think it will qualify as earned income. It's grant money. So being that it is grant money, I don't know that you can count that as earned income.
Yeah, and that was also, this is Will, that's also my thought too, because it's kind of like a scholarship. It's a nebulous kind of source of income. And so I think that has to be, I don't think we can answer that question at this present time. There's a lot of things that look, I don't even think it's count as you report it in your income tax. So we need time to look at that.
That's awesome. And these are amazing questions. And I think I'm just going to highlight that, the Solid Ground Ask a Lawyer program is really a really perfect space for that. And I appreciate these really kind of specific and nuanced questions being asked, because we're all benefiting and we're all having a lot of folks that are in these similar situations. I'm a firm believer that, like, if you've got a question, there's probably somebody else in the room that also has the question or is a little unsure or could use to hear it again in a slightly different way. So I'm loving that these questions are coming out. It's really beautiful. I'm gonna give a little pause just to see if anybody else is in the midst of typing or getting ready to unmute or raise their hand, because we've got time before we move on. So I'm just gonna pause.
Hi there. I do have a question, and you guys might have answered this, and so I'm sorry if I missed that. I have a client, and he just recently got custody of his minor child. He just had to apply back for SNAP benefits. So he's taking time off of work to reunite with his child. Would this exempt him from the work or no?
I missed the beginning of your question. Did you say he tested, was it a DNA test or some kind of other medical test?
No, there's no medical test. He just got custody of his minor child, and they had been apart for some years, and so he's now reuniting with that child and taking time off of work in order to do that. And so I'm just curious, he literally just applied for food benefits. And so I'm curious if he would need to be participating in the work thing.
Yeah, so if his child is now living with him more than half of the time in the household, then yeah, he would apply for himself and for the child. And an ABOD, someone that's subject to that work requirement, is somebody who doesn't have a minor child under age 18 living with them. So it sounds like he would not have that work requirement.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I have an answer. I did look it up. so that's why I say I always need time. So, and this is from, it's from the state. It says, ABOD can we qualify for basic food assistance using unpaid work hours? They must meet a total of 80 hours of work or volunteer combination of the two within 30 days. And they say, however, this says it cannot be combined with workfare hours to meet the work requirement. So I think a lot has to determine how many hours they're actually going to be working. But it says you can combine work and work programs to fulfill the 80-hour per work requirement.
This was in relation to the work study question, Will?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of nebulous. So I think one would actually have to ask about that. But it does allow work programs, and work study may not be considered a work program. So that's why I'm not really certain that will apply.
Okay. Well, we'll see if after the training, if there's a clearer answer that you all have, but otherwise I think, reaching out to Brittany, April, Will, Hannah, over the whole team over there through Ask a Lawyer to dive into that really quite specifically, and any other specifics that might pertain to this individual would be a good option at this point. So thanks, Will. I think we are set to move on.
Yeah, so how to avoid some pitfalls. So you're helping a client apply for DSHS benefits. Just some things to kind of keep in mind with the application and like reporting changes and stuff. So if you're reporting changes in circumstance, you need to have that reported to the department on the 10th day of the month following the change. So you have a client who, for instance, their pay is increasing, they get a raise like today, you would have until the 10th of October to report that raise to the department. And then after that, they could be held liable for not reporting that change. And then, if you have any doubts about needing to report changes, or if something is going on and whether or not you should report it to the department, you can contact the department and ask kind of general questions of them, or you can reach out to our program and kind of get some more clarifying information regarding the specific circumstance that your client is under. And then, you want to make sure that you're complying with all the work requirements or any other requirements that DSHS might be putting into place. Food stamps, it's really just going to be those ABOD work requirements that are going to be kind of held here. But there may be something else. If DSHS is asking something specific of your client and you're not sure why, reach out to our program and we're happy to kind of talk through that with you. And then another thing that I always kind of recommend is asking for an equal access plan. So DSHS must provide necessary supplemental accommodations to persons with mental health, neurological, physical, or sensory impairments, or other limitations that may prohibit or create barriers for your client to being able to access the programs that they are eligible for. So it is kind of open to anybody can kind of ask for an EAP if they need it. But kind of specifically people that have some type of barrier in place is what you're looking for. And equal access plans, kind of some ideas on like what can be requested is something that we see a lot is for people that have experienced domestic violence and they have like a private or oh my goodness, I am totally spacing, like the PMB program, so the confidential mailing program. So because of the way that the mail gets routed, a lot of times clients have, like will receive documents either at the date of their deadline or really close to that deadline. So you can actually request for additional time to be able to respond to DSHS's requests. Or some other things are, making sure interpreters are present. If you have a client that has kind of sensory issues and can get kind of overstimulated pretty easily, you can ask that the DSHS workers meet with them in like a private room that is free of distractions. So there's a lot of things that can kind of be added into this equal access plan to make it so that your client has a better way of communicating with the department. Another thing that you can do is designate an authorized representative. So this is going to be somebody that, the client trusts, that, they will receive, copies of letters and mail that DSHS sends out to the client to make sure that they're getting the mail. They can also speak to the department on behalf of the client. So like when I'm helping people apply for benefits, I will often designate myself as our program as the authorized representative if the client is, chronically unhoused or, has some really complex mental health issues that may make, waiting on hold or interacting with the department a really like a big barrier for them. And it's just kind of a way to assist the client in communicating with the department that doesn't necessarily require the client to be the one communicating with the department. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say there. And then, oh, sorry, sorry. Go ahead, Brittany.
Sorry, I had a little glitch with the slide switch. Are you finished?
Yeah, I think that's all I had to say there.
Okay. So April went through avoiding the pitfalls, and then next we want to talk about what do you do if something does go wrong? So if you're working with someone and their benefit is denied, reduced, terminated, or there's an overpayment alleged, that's something that's going wrong. If DSHS does something that negatively impacts a client's benefit, like a denial, reduction in benefits, a sanction, telling them that there was an overpayment, the person has the right to appeal this decision. And to appeal the decision, what they need to do is ask for a hearing. That's how you appeal the decision. The hearing is called an administrative hearing, and this is when the judge looks over the case to determine whether DSHS did something wrong. So a hearing, that's what it is. It's essentially a request for someone other than DSHS to look over the case. So the judge looks over the case and figure out if something went wrong. See if there was a mistake by DSHS. So you're working with someone, they were denied a benefit, their benefit was reduced, terminated. They said, oh, we paid you too much, you need to pay us back. The person can appeal this and they can request a hearing. They can request a hearing in a lot of different ways. Usually they'll get a letter that indicates that their benefit has been denied, reduced, or terminated. And on that letter, there's a phone number. They can call that number to request a hearing. They could also call the Office of Administrative Hearings and request it that way. They could go in person and request it. They could call the customer service number and request it like that. You don't have to use a magic word or say hearing, but we'd recommend, if you can remember to say that, that's best, to let DSHS know that they disagree, and that they think something's gone wrong. And there's some deadlines when you're requesting hearings. So a person has 90 days to request a hearing from the adverse action. The adverse action is the date of the letter where DSHS terminates, denies, or changes the benefits. They can request it later than that if they have good cause. So up to a year after the adverse action, but they have to show good cause. And there's also a way where they can continue to receive their food benefits while they're waiting for a hearing. But for that, they have to ask for the hearing even sooner. They need to ask for the hearing within 10 days of the date on the DSHS notice. If the 10th day falls on a weekend or a holiday, then they have until the next business days to ask for this fair hearing to continue their benefits. But they should be aware that if they, opt to do this, request the hearing within 10 days and continue their benefits, if they end up losing the hearing, they may have to pay back up to 2 months of benefits. So not more than that, but up to 2 months if they've been receiving them. Right? Then we wanted to put some of this information again here at the end. This is referring clients to benefits legal assistance. That's our team here that's been talking to you. For general referrals, you can use our intake line. You can give the client our intake line. We have a general email that you can write to, benefitslegalhelp@solid-ground.org. That's where you can talk about a specific question. You can make a referral that way, set up a consultation with us. And then we also have all of our specific emails. This is our team. Feel free to reach out to any of us individually as well. We'd be glad to help. I'll leave it on the slide before, but we are finished and ready for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have a comment that came in that I'm hoping you might have a little more information to share about it, or if this is something that if there's recourse. So it said, even if DSHS is found at fault if you are overpaid and have reported all your documents, it will still be your responsibility to repay the overpayment.
Yes, I did it myself. Had submitted everything, requested the hearing, got the hearing, went through it. It was a judge that oversaw the hearing. And again, because they figured the state, yeah, they made the mistake, but I would have to pay. So what I had to do is whatever amount that they deemed I needed to pay monthly, they just took it out of the benefit amount. And then I got the remainder.
Yeah, that can happen. If you have a case like that, definitely that would be something to bring to us for a referral. We can look through it with you. There is also something called a hardship waiver that we've had success in a few very extreme situations where clients really are experiencing severe hardship. But yes, can happen.
I'm not going to lie, that's horrifying. And I'm so sorry that that was your experience, S. It's a kind of a good reminder for me to plug what is part of our public benefits are key is that, it's these trainings that we do, but it is also, we have a good working relationship with DSHS, that office. And we like to hear about those barriers or those issues that we might need to raise up because these systems are so complex, where we can make them better, or at least advocate to make them better. That is part of what we at the coalition here do. So that's something that, if you're bringing these issues to Solid Ground, we connect regularly with Hannah to know not specifics or details, but, you know, aggregated, pulled up data of like, these are themes that and of issues that people are dealing with out there with their clients. You know, we hold these, what we hear from your questions and your comments in these trainings, we are tracking that. As Tim is putting, there's the survey that we would love for you to fill out before you leave this Zoom room today. There's a space to put that information in there. The Shop Talk forums is really a space for you all to connect, network with each other, share this kind of experiences, share your best practices, get resources. That's another place that we're listening for those things. You know, so we can, like, if we start hearing regular themes, you know, our ears perk up. So for example, one of the things that we've been really working on, because what we hear regularly is easier access to IDs for folks that have really high barriers. So just wanted to make that plug. And S, thank you for putting that comment in and sharing that. And, you know, we're open to hearing that feedback. Constance, I see your hand. Please take the floor.
Yeah, I have a question. So I'm 67 and I'm a kinship caregiver. I've been raising my nephew who's now 11, and I get non-needy TANF for him. He's never been in the system. And so I don't even remember what the amount is that I get. It just shows up magically on the card. And during COVID, we applied for food stamps. And then I make about $1,350 a month because I'm self-employed. I clean houses. And I'm blessed to have my own home, but I do have to pay house tax, and I get the little discount because I'm a senior for the house tax. And I decided to get my Social Security. I thought, well, it doesn't make sense to wait till I'm in my 70s. I'm not going to make that much more. And I thought it would be nice to have a little extra money. So my Social Security benefits are like $1,090. And we did our review back almost a year ago, I think it was, or less. And the guy said, well, now you only get $20 worth of food stamps. And I was like, okay, thank you. And so someone said to me that it was possible to apply for my child and not for me. Is that true?
I don't have a lot of information about that. I'd have to review that or look into it a little bit further.
Yeah, I kind of feel like after hearing, I came in at 30 minutes late, but after hearing the information today, I kind of feel like, you know, I heard you mention the self-employment and there was some kind of, you know, discount there that it's like, I feel like I should go back in and say, let's look at this all over again. Because when we went into the office, we got in like 10 minutes before the cutoff line, before they would take any more people to do their review. And we were the last person that they saw. And there was this, because by the time they got to me, it was like way over, and they were like pushing to get this guy out the door. I almost feel like I should just go back and reapply to just see if they really did cross all their T's and dot their I's.
Yeah, and if you want one of us to look through it with you too in more detail, we could do that if you want to reach out.
Okay. And that's through this phone number here, correct?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Or yeah, that email. Yep.
Great. Thank you, hon.
Thanks. Any other comments, thoughts, questions about any of the presentation, or maybe that's something a little slightly off that, you know, even if we don't have an answer, we can flag for a future training or follow up later. All right. Well, I would like to extend a huge thanks to April, Brittany, Will, for being here today, sharing your vast expertise with us. This was wonderful. One of our participants had to leave early, but private messaged me and said this was great. Thank you. I'm seeing some clapping hand emojis. Thank you for that. For folks that either, came in later, missed it, we more kudos in the chat there, so please pay attention to that. We will be probably sometime next week. Look for that email that's going to come from Tim saying, a link to the blog and all the resources that got shared here. We usually, like I said, within about a day or so, get this uploaded into our YouTube channel. So you can at least, go back and rewatch sections that you want to review or at your own pace. Please sign up for our future trainings. We're really excited about that. The long-term care coming up. And then Tim, thank you for throwing in the registration for the upcoming, the next shop talk. We do those quarterly. It's going to be on October 26th. And the way we kind of structure these is we try to structure a theme just to sort of like, one, make it something relevant that maybe we can't do a full training on, but it's information people need or want, or it's an issue that has been identified. We also want to make sure that you are able to say to your colleagues and supervisors, this is a really valuable use of my time. But it's not capped to that subject, but we are going to be talking about gender affirming care with Northwest Justice Project, Lavender Rights, Coalition for Ending Gender-Based Violence. And we're hoping, I think probably also the LGBTQ allyship. So, but, it can be open to anything, so if you have an immigration question or issue that you want to raise there, we're all ears for that. So, we're going to give you back a little bit of time. I appreciate all of the kudos in the chat for our presenters and our colleagues. Please fill out that post survey before you head out. Yes, Odessa, let me throw a link in here that should give you access immediately to the slides, and then we will also get that information out to you. But here, try this link for access to the slides. So I'm going to hang out for a couple minutes, just make sure there's no, other questions that come up. But thank you all so much for being here. Again, major thanks to our Solid Ground folks, April, Brittany, and Will. Appreciate you being here. And yeah, thanks, and have a wonderful rest of your day, all. Yes, we can get you the survey again. Thank you for asking.